Amen. We welcome you tonight to Faith Tabernacle World Bible Study. And tonight we are having our third installation on preparation. Amen. For transition. A lot of people are not prepared when people transition from this life to the next life. And there's a lot of debt that's incurred. So our wise pastor has started a series, and we brought in different people to talk about funerals, cremations, wills, trusts, and those types of things. And so tonight we have Brother Calvin from Serenity, who's going to be talking to us about funeral arrangements and cremations. Brother Calvin.
Thank you very much, Miss Cynthia. So I am Calvin Tolbert from Serenity Funeral Home and Cremation. I had the privilege of meeting Pastor Barker. I don't know if she remembers, but it was 2008 when I was at Southwest Mortuary. And we had a nice little ride from Southwest out to Evergreen, Washelli, going around the lake. But just been a little while. But so yes, I'm Calvin with Serenity Funeral Home. I have been in funeral service now for roughly 25 years. I started working at the funeral home back home in my hometown of Alton, Illinois. And I went through home to school to Seattle. So I moved to Seattle 2004, established Serenity in 2010. So coming up November 1st, we're coming up on 13 years, but it'll be 14 years next year, November 1st. So that's a little bit of a background about me. Funeral service nowadays encompasses a lot of things. People had a very much an introduction during the COVID times because people weren't able to keep their traditions that they were used to doing. So things have looked a little different. It's going back to kind of what people remember, but as anything, if you were used to doing plan A, you're forced into plan B. When you get to plan C and you're remembering plan A, it's always going to look a little different because it'll never look like the beginning. And I would say that's probably true for a little bit of the church world too. It still looks a little different because we're talking to a camera. But all jokes aside, when we think of funeral service, we think of it in three components. Obviously, someone passes away, and if you're calling me, I have three questions for you. One, who's going to be in charge? By that, I mean, who is the legal next of kin? So I met Brother Williams here. I'm assuming he's married. His wife would be the legal next of kin. In the absence of her, adult children. Well, adult children. If not that, then you get down to the siblings, nieces, grandparents, and so forth. So in the legal world, they call it rights of kinship. So, and everything has a lot of different directions in it. I'm trying to choose my words responsibly. But we have situations sometimes where people may have been together a long time, but they're not married, which has the potential to have big problems. So I would advise anybody, not just in the funeral home world, but I think in the old days they called it setting all houses in order. If you do all of it now, we don't have a lot of chaos and confusion when that time does come. Because everything is not death. Sometimes people just aren't able to communicate their wishes. But so we've established who's in charge. Then we want to know, what is it we are going to be doing? We can do three things. We can either bury a person, cremate a person. What's the other one? You was going good though. Entombment. Those are the primary methods of disposition. Now, the state of Washington, I believe it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, there's a new process called alkaline hydrolysis, which is kind of in that same realm of cremation because it's the body that's then dissolved in a solution. But at the end of it, you're still having to process the cremated remains. It's relatively new. In that same process, Desmond Tutu out of South Africa, he went through alkaline hydrolysis as well. So those are the primary forms of disposition. So when we're enlisting services, we want to know who's in charge, what are we doing, And then, of course, everything comes down to the finance. Who's going to be paying the bill? Naturally, when we plan for things, as you alluded to earlier, we always have a much better way of handling the finances because we've kind of removed that emotion piece from it. We're not trying to do something in the right now. We've thought about it. We've planned for it. It's easier. Loosely easier. So we've got the 3 points. Now we're in the financing portion. Naturally, I shouldn't say naturally, and actually what I'll do, I'm going to pass out our pricing guide. Oops. I'm going to flip back to, I'm going to put that down. Pardon me? Well, no. It's so that's the pricing guide. So we went through the part one, far as who's in charge, who's going to be our legal next of kin, our point of contact. We've established what we're wanting to do, either cremation, burial, alkaline hydrolysis, or entombment. Now we're representing the funeral home. Cemetery-wise, that's something totally different, which I think we all kind of know that. So it's very important for people to have that conversation with their families. One, do you want to be cremated? If so, what's going to happen with the cremated remains? Some people don't have that conversation. And then you have that tug of war where I want some of them, I don't want them. And my first caution that I always tell families, they're important to you. You keep them at home. Something happens to you, who's going to get the cremated remains? Some people don't think of it, others do. Then you also have your religious customs that you kind of need to take into consideration. The Catholic Church does not believe in scattering the remains or separating the cremated remains. They believe that it's a person and that person needs to be put to rest. That's why at most of the Catholic cemeteries, you'll see a kind of a push for people to either go into the ground, or they have a lot of the niches that they'll put the urn in. So if you go out to even Gethsemane, they have the cremation niches that they encourage you to place the cremated remains in. And some of the priests won't even do the service if they don't know what you're going to do with the cremated remains, because they do have that conversation with you beforehand. They're very they're very direct in that they want the person to be laid to rest and placed. So we know what we're doing on the cremation front. Now, the first thing on the pricing guide, it's got the traditional services. By traditional services, that's funeral with burial. Obviously, if we're a veteran, we can remove the charges of the cemetery and go to the national cemetery if we're honorably discharged. Not only is it the veteran, but it is the surviving spouse and any dependent children. By dependent child, that would be you. Any dependent child, that child can be 55 years old. But if they've never functioned as an actual adult, be it mental or physical impairment, they are still a dependent and they are still eligible for placement at the National Cemetery, just as the spouse would be able to be placed at the National Cemetery. And that is true for not just a cemetery, say in our area it's Tahoma. That's the same as if you choose to place Dad at Tahoma, but we're going to take Beverly back to my sister's house in Detroit. She passes away in Detroit. She would still be eligible for placement at the cemetery in Detroit. Once you're in the national system, you are in the national system. Okay? Now, just on our little information here, for burial, we've got it kind of broken into packages. There are the three that we start with. There's the legacy, tribute, and shepherd. On the services that we provide, we try to make it all encompassing. So for those who choose to do their own programs or their own flowers, you're very well able to do so. We would do what we call itemization, which would be the front part of the packet that you have. It wouldn't be the convenience part, because everything would be done a la carte, shall we say. So you would be selecting which package you want. And the only thing you would add to that would be your cash advance items, or other merchandise that you would request. When we flip the page, then we have the options for graveside service. Some people don't want the traditional church service. They want just a graveside service or even a direct burial. So we have the option for graveside service with visitation, graveside service with no viewing. The direct burial is addressed in the first part of the package, or in the first part of the booklet, because direct burial is simply just going to the cemetery. There is no service involved with it whatsoever. Okay. And then as we flip once again, you'll see that it says cremation and alkaline hydrolysis. I sort of briefly mentioned the alkaline hydrolysis when I talked about Desmond Tutu as it being the new thing here in the state of Washington. Again, they're still broken down into three services, because cremation and alkaline hydrolysis are, all intents and purposes, one and the same. The flesh is dissolved, and then the bones which are left are then processed. So when we think of cremation, that's why we don't call it ashes, because ash kind of dissolves in your hand. If you take some paper or you burn some wood in the fireplace, it'll dissolve in your hand. If we're cremating a person, the flesh is consumed. We're cremating them in a container. That container is consumed. The bone which is left is then dehydrated. At the end, it's then pulverized. So we call it cremated remains because it's more of a sand consistency. It will never dissolve. Okay. Alkaline hydrolysis, the flesh part is consumed, but then the bones are left to pulverize. Okay. The difference in the two, one is fire, one is water. So in some people, they'll call it water cremation or fire, or obviously the more traditional cremation. It's truly a matter of preference. Just like burial is a matter of preference. Some people say they're afraid of dirt. They don't want to be in the ground, so they opt for it entombment in the wall at a mausoleum or something. Everything is preferences. So the important part about prearrangement is more or less locking in your preferences so other people don't have to make decisions on your behalf. Okay? When we go to the other side, we're still dealing with the cremation and alkaline hydrolysis. There's the option for cremation with memorial service, which we all know what a memorial service is. That's a service without the body present. And I guess I should have kind of done a little vocabulary thing. So whenever the body is present, that's always a funeral, whether we're viewing the person or not. The body there, it's a funeral. If it's an urn, memorial, because the body is not there. By the federal regulations, anything that is not recognizable as a human being, it's not a human. Which is why we can't give out long bones. So when we cremate people in some cultures, they do what's called bone picking. They want to pick bones, but you can't let them pick bones that are distinguishable as human bones. Every culture is different. Okay? So those are the quick things on the pricing guide. Now, again, the pricing guide is there kind of as a rubric. Merchandise, cash advances, and those kind of things will always add to the pricing. So far as your cemetery charges, obituaries, death certificates, flowers, there's flowers included. Some people wish to add more flowers. Those are all personal options. Now, one of the things that a lot of people take into consideration now when we're doing pre-arrangements, people travel. Most people doing pre-arrangements are still in that frame of life where they are moving about and, living their life. There is a travel option with pre-arrangements where, as long as you are 75 miles from where you've passed away, we will bring you back to the state of Washington for your final arrangements. It's reassuring for some. As I said, most people are doing pre-arrangements. They're still moving about. They're not at that point, because we try not to pre-arrange people who are what we would call imminent, because I always say the paperwork is still in limbo when they pass away. So that's that portion. Now, when some people reach that point of life where they're placed on hospice, I think everyone is vaguely familiar with hospice programs. Okay. I have a few little brochures. One of them is from the Providence. They call it transitioning. I'm quite sure Pastor Barker has been at many of people's bedside during those times. So I don't want to just stand here and do a lecture. Are there any questions about anything that anyone has in particular?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
If we were, I was looking at the funeral at the top,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand all this, that, Catholic, I'm wondering, when we say 2 days, and I know prices change, this is just for now, so I'm just kind of getting a sense of this. So, we're saying that everything is gonna take place within 2 days? Talking about the facility and staff presentation, or that's just kind of just a general.
No, so that's a good question. So what Pastor Barker asked is basically on the first two, it has 2 days listed for viewing. And what that is, I call that the more traditional minded people, the ones who want the viewing that Friday evening with the service that Saturday. Because, well, personally, we will always do what we call that first viewing for the family, because I want you to see your loved one before we leave the funeral home. So if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, we'll have an opportunity to do so. We don't want to do that the day of the funeral. So that visitation stuff that you see there is designed for that Friday, whatever day, I'm just saying Friday. So that day before the actual service. So essentially you would have 3 opportunities to view with the immediate family. You would be coming the day of whichever day you select, to make sure that's how you want them to look. That's the right, hair color or whatever we're doing. That's what I want the public to see. Those days are public viewings.
Okay,
Okay?
and that makes it kind of, okay, and then, like, let's say I chose the first one, then I would need to add 6,900, which is just, 6125.
Correct.
Okay, and so if I went to, I would also add on, if I wanted these services, graveside and public.
Well,
Well, no viewing, I mean graveside,
well, that's already included though.
so that is included.
Correct. So the 61 would be all inclusive.
Oh, okay.
That's all the services, the flowers, the limousine,
Right,
and programs.
okay,
So that's all your services. What you would be paying additional for, what items are not included, are that cash advance portion. Death certificates, obituary in the newspaper. If we're going to the cemetery on a day where we need motor escorts, the escorts, those types of items are what's not included. Because some families choose actually not to have escorts. They want to meet at the cemetery. Or, for instance, if it's a veteran, we're doing services on a Saturday, but we can't go to the National Cemetery on a Saturday, we're going that Monday. So we don't need escorts. Yeah. And in those instances, some people choose not to have a limo, or they, that's when I'll say funeral arrangements are definitely not like going to McDonald's and getting number one with a extra side of fries or something, because it's situational. Things change. And one thing, and I always say nowadays in times, there's really no easy way to say it, but we're living in a time I've gained weight. Most people have gained a little weight. We have to account for that. So definitely when we're cremating people, if it's someone who is over 300 pounds, there is additional fees because of the fuel usage. And obviously if we're putting you in a caskets we measure at the elbow. If it's greater than 25 inches, we're going to have to look at something a little different. Because there's different caskets, depending on what the situation is, but have to take all that in consideration.
Glad you explained that, because I was going to ask about that. You had it back there. I'm sorry. I went forward and cut everybody off. Well, I said that. You got a question after me. I want to get my question.
These devices don't include caskets, right?
Correct. Because that's truly a selection thing that people are doing. Like I said,
Yeah, 'cause you can get in that cost.
you can't, and I would implore you, make sure you're getting the right one, though. Because I've dealt with people, and you can buy it there. Measure from the elbow.
But there's a question. I just have one more question.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that is, now, I know it might sound horrible, but since the human body is made up of, a great deal of water, I thought once you're embalmed, it probably takes a person down a size or two.
A size or two?
Three or four sizes.
No, not necessarily. Every situation is different, though. I emphasize that every situation is different. Just think about people. So we'll say John Doe, he was doing just fine. He got ill. What'd they do? They took him to the hospital. They put him in the ICU. What they do in the ICU? They put the IV in his arm. He was there for 14 days. You can get some, but you can't get it all. And if he like me, you like going to Eat Health, you like getting pound cake, we don't need no extra. All jokes aside, and it's the times we live in. Everybody's a little heavy. They put sugar in everything. It's addicting.
That's all my questions. Speaking with you.
So, I think I have two questions. First,
Yes, sir.
going back to the veterans, so they have up, the kid have up to 50 years old.
No. So a dependent. So when you become 18, you're not a dependent no more. Now, if you've been mentally or physically incapacitated and never functioned as an adult, now we're not talking about a spoiled adult, never functioned as an actual adult, you are still considered a dependent. On the spectrum, are they a dependent? Are they? That's what I'm saying. So if you can, or if you are classified as a dependent, spectrum or not, you are okay.
Only reason I was asking that question is my sister, my niece, she's on the spectrum, but they classify her that she's not on
But is she a dependent for somebody?
my sister.
No, you're saying your sister. So when I say is she a dependent, does she live independently on her own?
No, she lived with us.
So, and is your dad a veteran, I'm assuming?
No, her husband was a
Your sister her husband was a veteran?
yes.
Well, that's something totally different then. So she is a dependent in that she's a spouse of a veteran. But now, when they say a dependent child, something like that, that's someone who's never married. So if you've married, then you functioned as an adult.
No, not that situation. I have a situation like you're talking about, like my grandson, Josh is autistic. He will forever be considered, dependent.
Okay, that's
That's what. And so his sister, daughter, his sister's child, she's a special needs child.
Okay, so she didn't marry.
No.
Okay, I misunderstood. I'm sorry. No,
It's the sister's child, your niece.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
gotcha.
That's what you're
Okay. Well, I kept hearing sister, so well, if your sister got married, yeah.
I mean, that's why we have a conversation, so it's clear.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Like I said, her husband is
Then she will always be okay. Yep, she will always be okay.
Child function as an adult, then your children will not be buried with just the spouse. Gotcha.
And that is a legal spouse, not common law spouse. You laugh.
Kids, that's legally you don't get.
I'm just saying, we've dealt with people with, we've been living there, and I'm like, no, but you're not this right.
Like spouse. How long have you been living? And I know what you're saying because I had a situation like that many years ago, and I thought, and that was the thing that was so heartbreaking because they had been together like 20 years. But she felt they were married. Oh, I get what you're saying.
Tell that
But
to
the
Social
law, you're
Security.
not married.
That's right, and I'll say something else.
Tell it to Social Security. There's benefits to marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. It's.
I will bless you.
I mean, it's a harsh reality.
Yeah. That's right.
And actually, that's a good thing. That conversation, because that goes into number one about who has the legal right to make decisions. That's just like if you, again, like I said, all of it's not passing away. You're in a car accident, you get taken to the hospital. Who's making decisions on your behalf? You can't speak for yourself. It's a hard conversation, but it's a real conversation. Because you can have somebody that you've been staying with, we real good, but mom or dad get the phone call, mom and dad leave next kin, they can tell them to get out the room. And all it does, it creates a lot of tension, and I mean, it happens more often than
We've all seen it.
Nah, I was sniffing and he actually dad had
one coming work.
because I was a veteran. Like him and his brothers and stuff was married with me, and I was like, no, not married, buried with me.
Nope.
Well, we hope you never qualify for that right now, because that means you will not make it to 19.
Time to go.
Military and start your own family.
Yeah. What branch were you in, Mr. Wood?
Army
Army?
was stationed at
Okay.
My other question was, as far as I know that the military take care of certain stuff, but as far as for people say that they rent a casket.
Rent a casket under what circumstances? Now, we do rental caskets for cremation, not burial.
No, because some people was like that they would rent a casket for, I guess, a burial, but then get put into a pine box, buried in, so that way they can save the family.
I've heard of that though.
They rent it for the service, so like if you have a service, then the person is in the casket, if they have the service is over.
They put them into
In
a,
a box.
I have heard of that.
I can't speak for that.
I don't know if it's true, but I've heard of it.
No.
You remember those boxes that looked like somebody had taken to
That's what I can tell you. No.
those boxes a long time ago looked like somebody taken cardboard symbol.
Well, so that's a doe-skin casket.
Yeah.
So now here's the thing, though. That's an actual casket. That's not a box. Because a cemetery, the ones that I know of, would not accept that for burial. Because two reasons. Number one, you want something with a little integrity. Number two, if we should ever have to exhume this person, will we be able to get this thing out of the ground? Having exhumed people, I know it's not an easy task. You need something to be able.
So why do they still make those things?
Well, that's when you start getting into what people, well, not just, no, you got, now I'm going to tell you the truth. I've had some people that have plenty of money. There you go. It's a matter of what's important to them. In some instances.
So is it, this, so they can use it, but there are some cemeteries that won't allow it.
So you could, I mean, a doe skin casket is a casket. So, and I know they'll look like felt.
Yeah, right, that's the one.
That's a casket.
Uh-huh.
That, I mean, I don't know a cemetery that would refuse that one. Now, they might tell you you can't put that in the mausoleum, you know, because as the person deteriorates, nature takes course. They want something with more rigidity, something that's more structurally sound.
Right, right.
Because that's the other reason why cemeteries do require the outer burial container to protect the ground. Because in the old days, when you go to a lot of the smaller cemeteries, you go to the country, the little church, you know, in the south, the little country cemeteries, you have all those little divots and sinkholes. Because over time, the ground sinks. So with the concrete grave liner at minimum, some places, you know, people opt to buy a vault. It keeps the ground from sinking. Makes the cemetery pretty. Yes, ma'am.
I've heard about people trying a different burial where they are not
In a burial that's not in anything. So are we doing like Muslim, Jewish, terramation, where the person is kind of dissolved in a pod?
No, they're just, I mean, this I heard, I don't know about people who are opting to just return to the dust of the earth, if you will, like just being buried so that after the body decays, back to the earth.
So I think what you're talking about is what they call human composting or terramation. That's a relatively new thing. It is legal in Washington now. You may have seen it advertised on the evening magazine channel. If you watch King 5, I think they did a thing on there. I'm an old traditional minded person. That's just me. One thing that I always listen to, because a lot of people say they do things because of the cost perspective. You know, I want to reduce costs. But that costs just as much as burial. It's like $7,000 to do terramation. You are basically put in a little pod, and no, you're not. You just break down. You know, nature takes its course, shall we say? You decompose that away.
So they're not put in the ground. Okay, so now this person is like literally just
Only thing I can think of in that regard would be either a traditional Jewish person, I think it's Hasidic Jews, or Muslim, where they bury within 24 hours. And in the state of Washington, those cemeteries, there's a House of Mercy down in Kent. We were just there a couple of weeks ago, actually. They use a grave liner there still because they don't want their ground to sink. Because we live in a litigious society, so you walking through the cemetery, you could, in the cemeteries here, you're going to use a grave liner. That's just... Mind is powerful. Mind. Well, I mean, but be realistic. Above ground, you're going to still decompose. I mean, nature always takes course. Don't none stop God. If it slows it down, I don't think it's to the extent that they think they're. This container is sealed, but there's different levels. That's why I said a concrete grave liner or a vault. So a concrete grave liner is the minimum to protect the ground. And it does have a big hole in the bottom of it, so the elements can get in. It's
So that's why we do what some do. You know, their casket, I went to one and I was like, maybe something different about that casket. Well, it has holes.
it's all wood, no metal. They look like little dowel rods to, like on furniture actually. If you,
Now, that is, why they want that body? Go back to the ground and put it in the hospital.
yeah, no embalming.
I learn something every day. Well, I'm really learning a lot. I know something right in my wheel now.
Shit on. Yes, ma'am. The alkaline hydrolysis.
That one, yeah, the water one.
Mhm.
Have people ever, I know when my brother-in-law, put some of his ashes in a little, well, not ashes, his remains and little hearts and little, tiny
Little keepsakes.
bottles. We still have these at the house. But has people ever used things like make jewelry out of their remains?
Say make jewelry.
Well, yeah, like instead of putting it in an urn, they're putting it in,
Well, there's a lot of different things. So they have the, cause there's a little bit of carbon when you cremate a person. That's how diamonds are formed. It's carbon. There's, now personally, I wouldn't spend that kind of money, but if you choose to, you can. You can make a diamond out of the cremated remains. It ain't gonna be a carat though.
little piece of
That's why I say, for me, I'm in the funeral home business, don't get me wrong, but I'm a practical person. There's just some stuff I don't understand. Well, it's not, you do what you want to do.
No, I was just
I'm bad for business, y'all. There's just some stuff, and you almost tell people, think about it and call us in the morning. Because it don't make sense.
Yeah, sometimes the way people are grieving, that's why I want to have stuff
Which,
now.
again, I'll go back to, now is the time to have the conversations with your family, with your friends, and I don't have children, but definitely involve your children with the, because in most instances, that's who's going to be carrying out your final wishes. Or your nieces, nephews. Get people on the same page. Now, one of the things I would tell anybody in our area, the cemetery prices, you in the fortune to see, but the cemetery prices out here are so expensive. So if you're wanting, you want to be buried, figure out what cemetery you want to go to and get your plot. Because most of them here are, and if you don't want to do that, at least get a large insurance policy where it can cover the cemetery prices. Because I think before long, our prices are going to be resembling a lot of what California is. I think the average cemetery price in California is almost $20,000, which is why the cremation rate there is so high. That's one reason why the cremation rate here has got, I think we're probably, if we're not at 90, we're very, very close to 90. Because, I know I don't have $20,000 for the cemetery alone. That's just, that's a lot of money. It truly is.
I have one more question. I promise. Can you, let's say I know automatically I want number one, and I have policy. Can I, because I want things so that I don't want nobody to be able to change my wishes. So could I tell my insurance company, which I went to visit today, just tell them, I said, we're gonna have something today, and I wanna find out, can I name who I want to take care of my remains?
That is true. You can do that. It's basically just like anybody on a beneficiary. You would be making that the business on the beneficiary. And you can, just like I'll make up a number now. Your policy is $20,000. You can say the beneficiary I want is Jones Funeral Home. The amount they get to spend is $5,000. Because you do your percentages. I want 2% there, 3%. So that's definitely possible. But when it comes to a pre-arrangement, either doing it that way or through the funeral home, it's your arrangements. No one can go through and change your arrangements.
That's my other question. I want it irrevocable, and nobody can change what I do.
And well, the irrevocable assignments work in two ways too. So if you wind up going into a nursing home or something like that and you're on state assistance, those monies cannot be touched, because the state don't kick in to help nobody until you don't have anything. But if you put it in there and you got it irrevocable, they know it's for your final expenses, because the state ain't gonna take care of you. So as long as you got yours over there to be taken care of, that's fine. They won't touch it. Now, the other thing you can do, you can pack money over there if you want to give some to your loved ones. Just like anything else, cash advances. Well, when I pass away, I want them to have a big party. I want them to have a nice catered dinner. I want $5,000 over there. There's the $5,000. We had one family, European folks, but they had sold their house, and there was some good money sitting over there. So she had a direct cremation and about $40,000 in cash advances. Perfectly legal.
I like that.
Learn something new. I got it now. I'll be getting back to state farm tomorrow.
So basically what you're saying is that you
Correct. You can do beneficiary at the funeral home, on an insurance policy, or you can do an actual pre-arrangement through the funeral home. Those are all up of personal choices. But my thing is, I would tell anybody, if you're thinking you want burial and you're not a veteran, get the cemetery. The funeral home ain't going nowhere. We will always work with a family. Cemeteries don't work with you. That,
Or at least by the kind of services that you have to take. You might not have to, like, what I'm saying is, like, if you haven't taken your spot, let's say the person that passed away is not going to continue doing it.
correct, but I'm just saying, depending on the cemetery, it could be a lot of money. I mean, because a lot of families, they want, one of the things about burial, people want to be with the family. This is our little area. I mean, you all know what the cemetery is around here. I know you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I have a policy. I took out another one called final expenses.
Final expense.
And we wanted to do covering, I have my whole life and stuff like that. But he asked me, because I kind of go by and just review stuff. I asked him, he said, I'm not sure. I said, well, we're having this meeting tonight. I said, I'd probably call you back because I know who I want. And so I know what I want. I want you to name them. Take my kids off of that final expense and put them on there. I said, but I gotta make sure I can do that.
I mean, you can, like I said, I've had somebody do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, don't nobody telling me what to do even when I'm dead. I know what I want.
So I want us all to wrap it up and not have to do it.
Well, it's
We
appointed after
shall
the
be
war.
changed.
About we disagree. Just bury me and let's go back and have a party.
But where do you want to be buried at?
Well, I'm military, so.
Oh, Tahoma. Are you originally from Seattle? Where are you from? Jackson?
Now, like,
I've only been to Jackson and I was 7, 8.
well, we have our own family cemetery down here. I can be buried there, I can be buried here with my husband. But we have our own cemetery, back home.
Well, we just do, but I don't want to be there.
But,
We agree, right?
Are you from You're not from Mississippi?
We are family.
Military too? I'll say everybody here military? Well, you're not military. But you're not military.
Money, with that flight, we'll just be buried. I'll just be buried here, but it's a great place.
Well, but pre-arrangement wise, you could even include airfare money in there for your relatives if you want. That's what I'm saying. The cash advances, you can do that however you want to.
No. Yeah, he said you can fly them out if you do pre-arrangement to come to your funeral day anytime. You already there.
Tough love, huh?
No, it's just
Better put it on Zoom.
See, I told you the pandemic, ABC. We remember what A looked like. We got used to B. We now at C. But yeah, we ain't quite back to A yet. Here, the little camera.
My kids. Yeah, I got you.
My niece,
So,
because I ain't said nothing about my child.
can you basically estimate expenses going up like 2%, 3% a year?
Well, that's one of the things about a pre-arrangement, though. They are designed to grow interest over time. So when I said, about that, we don't really do pre-arrangements for people that we know are what we call that imminent. Because, again, when I say the paperwork ain't, shall we say the ink ain't gonna be dry, probably. But somebody will just hypothetically say, preparing them, about to be the empty nesters. They're setting the little affairs in order, 45, 50 years old. Generally, that's the best time to start doing those kind of things because you probably got 25, 30 years left. So once everything is, because you're paying on it. You don't have to, unless you choose to make a lump payment, you can, but you're making incremental payments. You're gaining interest during that whole time, and you've also locked the prices in at this. So the pre-arrangement world is devised to keep up with. So, naturally the death certificates are going to be more. I remember when I moved here, I think they were $15 a copy. Now we're at $25. So, some things, everything only goes up, nothing goes down. But to answer your question directly, we can't predict 2% price increases because I don't know what my prices might be next year. If we have another pandemic, I think we all experienced that though. You just go by now, the eggs. Things that, we just don't know. Please don't say that. Okay. Deacon Williams. No, like I said, if I had one takeaway, I would tell anybody. I go back to that first one because I think that is the most important thing for life in general, is who is going to be your spokesperson if you can't speak for yourself. In most instances, like I said, it's a wife, parents, children, somebody. Everybody needs they call it an advocate in the medical world. Who's going to be your advocate? Who is going to speak for you? And make sure that person knows where your paperwork is. That's something totally different because you got power of attorney. There's a durable power of attorney. A power of attorney is one thing. Power of attorney dissolved at the time of death, though. Well, yeah, that's when you would be doing that kind of stuff when you setting your house in order, your last will and testament, your medical power of attorney, your finances, because I've experienced a lot of people, they don't even know the passcode to get into a bank account. And I would regret to tell people the biometrics don't work post-mortem. Can we bring the phone up and use the pick? And they pick, you use your phone, your pinky to unlock the phone. That don't work when you pass away. They call them biometrics. Why? What's bio? Life.
fingerprint is like,
Is it warm?
no, I'm saying
What's that old song they sang at the church? While the blood is.
Yeah.
And that's TV.
No,
Don't watch TV.
Movies have you seen like,
I know, they
like
cut
they
the
cut the
thumb out.
finger off,
And
they
then
take
put
the
it up
eye
to the-
out.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
TV.
I call that a felony. They call that mutilation in my world.
That's, I mean, they was trying to get into the safe or whatever, and they
I know.
cut the
Doesn't
finger
work.
off, cut
No.
the ear,
Don't
the
work.
eye, took it out.
I've tried explaining it to a lot of people, and some of them drive on down. You can do it. It didn't work. Two things I have learned in life: do not argue with me.
Right. So just make sure that your family knows where, have access to all your information.
And
And also,
sometimes
we
it's
got
not
to make it
family. It
point.
might be a good friend.
Right. Well, whomever you,
Whoever you deem that's responsible enough.
right. Right.
No, and you know, who knows their children better than a parent?
Yeah.
By whom?
They were so upset, and I was like, just like you say, every parent knows their child, and they know who's going to be right, and who was the parent watching, or would have watched versus what they were doing. So, I've seen a lot of people,
I'm surprised that funeral homes and whatever don't have like lockbox on site to be able to take all the information that's completed here, so that way if something was to happen, if they use all the paperwork and stuff like that, it would be available.
So, I mean, we don't have lock boxes, and I can think of a whole bunch of reasons why I don't want a lock box with your personal information in my facility. No, I don't want that. But if we have a pre-arrangement on someone, we do have a file with their information. So, to a degree, we have information, but we don't have a lock box with, you know, all. We're not a. Yeah. Well, not just a bank. That's your personal data. Ma'am?
No, I was just thinking that,
Yeah. We don't want, you don't want people holding on to all that, do you? I mean, I'd love to have that beach house. You want to help? See? I mean, you know, you have that now where people have stolen people's identity and bought stuff and they didn't know they even bought it. And then you go to sell your house and you got a lien. I'm like, I don't have a lien. Yeah, you do. Like I said, we live in unique times, and one of the things, if it's not this year, it's next year, the state of Washington is even changing the death certificate. What we have now was what they call a long form, which has all of the information from the deceased's full name, social security, date of birth, occupation, mother's maiden name, home, all of that. If you're going to Comcast to turn off cable, they don't need to know what you died from and all of that information. They just need something to say, John Doe actually passed away, turn his account off. So things have changed. And even in the obituary world, you have some people who don't want the full obituary information because of identity theft. People have gotten very creative over the past few years. Stuff we wouldn't even think about. Just it's sad. I mean, I always say they got too much free time.
there was really have to be careful things that I read on Einstein or something. People would go look at the obituary and see when funeral was and go by.
Go to the house.
Yeah, I was like.
Well, we know they're gone for this,
Right.
like a sitting duck.
This is very good information. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Williams?
As far as,
In-
the $100
Yes, sir. 'Cause- and not to be funny, you got minor children now.
Yes. And just making sure that all of those things are done, and make sure that I've been going back and make sure that my beneficiaries have been right, because sometimes you don't realize that you have stuff and you might have been in a previous relationship and that person is still on your information.
Been through that one before too.
So
County Metro. I tell people that's my retirement package. I'm gonna write me a book. People come out the woodwork.
so that's why I try to just make sure all of that information and stuff is done. That way I don't have no.
Free to give us a call. We're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you.